So let me first lay out some of the ground rules about our breakout session and what it is and what it is not. We are here primarily to come up with some suggestions on ways to improve upon the unemployment insurance system. So yes, please, by all means, if you find that there's a deficiency or something wrong with the unemployment insurance system, we want to hear your story. We want to hear what's going wrong. But if you can advise anyway, come on in. If there's any way you can offer up a suggestion on ways to make it better, that's what we're really trying to capture here, is ways to improve the system that we can bring back to our legislators and our governor and other policy decision makers and say, you know, this is broken, this is what happened to me, here's something you can do to make it better. Here's some policy you can change to make things better. So I'm really delighted that this morning I've got two experts in this area. I've got a real-life small business owner, Miss Judy Kubert from Tom, and she's got a terrific story to share with all of you. And then I've got Amy Brackenberry with the Building Industry Association of Washington, BIAW. They represent small independent builders throughout the state of Washington. How many members do you have?
We have 12,500.
12,500.
State's largest trade association.
Wow, that's pretty big. That's more than I have. I got about 2,800. All right. So I'm really fortunate to have these two folks. What we're going to do is I'm going to make a couple of comments on some of the things that I know about unemployment insurance. I'm going to hand it off to Amy, and then we'll finish up with Judy. And then we're going to open it up. So think about if you have a personal experience with unemployment insurance with one of your employees or yourself or anything like that you'd like to share with the group, please feel free. And then we'll try to brainstorm, come up with some suggestions and ideas that Wes can write down. I'm hoping for a list of maybe 10 or 12. And then we're going to vote. In each of your folders, you should have 5 dots. You should actually have 10, 2 strips of 5. 5 for this session and 5 for the next breakout session. No fair putting all 10 on one. You can only vote with 5. But if you do feel really strongly about one of them in particular, you can load up your 5 on that one if you want to. You don't have to vote for different ones. So if you feel more weighted about one, you put 3 on one, 2 on one, however you want to break it up. But each person has 5. I didn't get a vote, so we all get a vote. It's a very democratic process. Then at the end, the top 3 or 4 that we come up with will be reported out back at the main general session after lunch, correct? Great. And we have Katie Baring here from the Policy Center keeping me on time and on track, right? We're in here till about 10:30. If you need to get up and take a break, feel free. It won't be disruptive at all. There's some water in the back and all that for you. Let me first start off with unemployment insurance very generally. You're all familiar with the UI, I hope a little bit. UI was first originally constructed years ago as, and this is the key thing that I like to really focus on, as a system to protect workers that are laid off from their job through, quote, no fault of their own. They were laid off, they lost their job because of no fault of their own. All right?
Interesting premise.
People are laughing about that. That's actually in the charter that formed the unemployment insurance system, which is administered by an agency called the Employment Security Department. Now, over the years, the unemployment insurance system has, shall we say, morphed a little bit into something that's more than just no fault of your own, and something that a lot of people, some small business owners, I'm glad we have. How many folks actually own a small business in the room here? Excellent. I'm really happy to see all these folks. And a lot of policy people here that are very busily taking notes to take back to their people in Olympia as well. So there's something in the unemployment insurance system that I wanted to highlight. It's called voluntary quits. And you're scratching your heads going, what the heck's a voluntary quit? Well, our state of Washington has identified 11 reasons that an employee of your organization can quit their job voluntarily. They're not laid off because business is bad. They're not fired. They can quit their job and qualify for unemployment insurance benefits. And in the state of Washington, we now have 11. We just got 10, but we approved another one. Reasons that you can quit your job. Now, some of them are pretty darn good reasons, I'll have to admit, and make sense in that probably they would account for a reason for you quitting your job and receiving unemployment insurance benefits. Now, these I have to make sure that you understand that when somebody does quit under voluntary quits, the costs to the system are not borne by the individual business owner. They're called socialized costs. They are paid for by a social tax by each of the businesses, so they're not directly back to you. They're spread out over all businesses. Voluntary quits are. But I just want to highlight a couple of the last two voluntary quits so that you understand, and so I can make my point about how I think that my point I'm trying to assert here is that maybe voluntary quits are getting a little bit out of hand. The last voluntary quit that was approved was one to allow an employee to quit to join an apprenticeship program. So if you're in Dunn Lumber and you're an employee and you say, hey, I want to be a pipe fitter or an electrician or another state-approved apprenticeship program, I could quit my job with Dunn Lumber and go to this apprenticeship program and collect unemployment insurance benefits. Now, I'm not trying to lead the conversation, but do you think that's a proper use of unemployment insurance benefits in the state of Washington? Was that person laid off because of the fault of his own? Or was this a career choice that they wanted to make? Believe it or not, the state approved that, and that is voluntary quit number 11 is the apprenticeship program voluntary quit. Not necessarily a good use of what I think our money is to be spent for. All of you as employers have to pay unemployment insurance taxes. Employees have to pay taxes. Employers are on look for the full freight. The second voluntary quit I mentioned that I found was kind of interesting, that they would stick it in the unemployment insurance system, is folks that are victims of domestic violence. A terrible, terrible crime, a terrible thing, something we're all dealing with. But if you are a victim of domestic violence, the state legislature voted that, well, this is a terrible problem, and we should pay for people that have to quit their jobs if they're a victim of domestic violence. Employers couldn't agree that they need help, they need assistance, but it's a social problem, not an employer problem. Is it your fault that one of your employees is a victim of domestic violence? Probably not. Why should the employers be forced to pay for that person to be off of work? We said you should fund it out of the general fund. It's a societal program. The legislature didn't agree with us, and so they put that in law. The thing that really bothers me about that particular voluntary quit is there are no checks or balances at all. You do not have to have a police record. You do not have to file anything. All you do is have to call up the unemployment insurance department and say, I'm a victim of domestic violence, and you are automatically approved for that. Right? Automatically. You do not have to search for work. No search requirements. Your employer doesn't even have to be notified. You usually get a notice from the Employment Security Department that your person is not showing up to work because they're a victim of domestic violence and they're now collecting UI. And you get a letter from them, not from them. They don't even have to notify their employer that you were on there. That's not fair to you. Not necessarily. These are 2 out of the 11 that are approved there. And so what I'm saying is that maybe we need to take a look at some of the voluntary quits. Maybe we need to take a look at why these keep getting approved and put into our unemployment insurance system. Do they belong there? Do we need to take a few off? Should some be shifted over to another fund? These are some of the issues I'm working on. Last year we did pass a bill that I'm afraid is going to be very much under attack, that put a circle around the voluntary quits and said, this is it. There aren't any more right now. This is all you can have. No more, legislature. I'm afraid that bill's going to get rolled back and that there are going to be more and more proposals for apprenticeship programs and other wonderful things that don't really fit in an unemployment insurance system. So I'm very worried about what is going to happen with voluntary quits in the near future. Because the thing is, we're one of the few states in the country, actually we're the only state in the country, with a really healthy unemployment insurance trust fund balance. We have several billion. How many billion are we up? 3? Right, about 3?
Right.
We have about $3 billion in reserves. Unfortunately, we were overtaxed for several years, so we dumped more money in than we really needed. So we have $3 billion in reserves, where all the other states in the country are out of money and going bankrupt in their unemployment insurance. They're actually borrowing money from the feds to pay for their UI programs. So we have this nice, robust pot of money here, and legislators are looking at it going, wow, look at all that money over there. Ooh, I can't really fund apprenticeship out of the general fund. I can't fund domestic violence out of the general fund. Why don't I stuff it over in UI and make it a UI program where they have money? So they keep looking at this big pot of money and sticking things over here. So I'm very concerned about the legislature's insatiable appetite to fund programs through funding sources that have nothing to do with them. So that's something we need to pay attention to and take a look at. All right? Any questions about what I said on voluntary quits? Yeah, go
Well, I
ahead.
have one, not to belabor that or go through all 11, but there's one that just drives me crazy, and that is when one of my employees quits, they quit for another employer, and then I get the claim and I can't get it denied. And I don't know what happens to their job, I guess they thought they had a job or something, but, can you help me understand, that one just doesn't.
That was voluntary quit number 1.
Is that
Yeah.
your one?
And go figure, not quite sure
You know
why.
what the rationale is? I mean, you work around those people, I thought maybe you could tell.
That one's been there forever, and I'm not quite sure why it got stuck in. I don't necessarily agree with it, but that is voluntary quit number 1. It says an individual is not disqualified from benefits if he or she has been offered a bona fide offer of work.
So if they quit you and go to work for somebody else and that doesn't pan out, then they collect unemployment benefits, but those benefits are supposed to be socialized.
Socialized.
Yeah,
It
they're not
shouldn't-
charged back.
It shouldn't be
They're not
used as
The new
a-
employer.
Well, they are if they didn't stay at that job long enough.
Right, if
Or
they don't
stay at
work
that job
long
more than
enough
90,
to.
60 days, then they get
Right.
charged back to you.
It always comes back to me.
So it is socialized or is it? I mean, if
It's,
they quit
it is, right now it is supposed to be socialized, but if they quit, but there is because of the legislation that was passed this last session, there was Employment Security is calling it a technical error in the bill, and as of January 1st this next year, you, the individual employer, will be charged for that, and it won't be socialized the way it was supposed to be. So,
Thanks.
Yes.
Good question. Yes, ma'am.
Are the voluntary quits, is that list available on the Employment Security website, or do we have to go into the legislative?
I've got the list here with me. I brought it. It's in actual RCW Revised Code of Washington
Okay,
State
so it's
law.
in-
I don't know if it's on their website or not.
Yeah, it's on
It
I
might
think
be.
it's
On Employment
Are there
Security?
copies?
Well, the employer would print off, the files, the voluntary files. It's printed off.
I'm going to turn it over to Amy Brackenberry with BIW, and she's going to share a little bit about her perspective on unemployment insurance.
okay.
Amy?
Well, Mark did a really great job talking about the voluntary quits, and as I was telling Judy before we started up here, this is the employer program about which I get the second most calls from BIW members, with workers' compensation being first. And I've had a lot of calls from people in this last year calling with questions about whether an employee is or is not entitled to unemployment benefits. And unfortunately, in Washington State, we have a law, it's in unemployment insurance as well as workers' compensation, where it says that the law will be liberally construed to favor the claimant. And that is almost always what will cause an employee to be eligible for unemployment insurance benefits, even if it doesn't make practical or common sense that they should. As Mark said, you know, the law is unemployment benefits are there for employees who find themselves out of work through no fault of their own. Then we have this list of 11 voluntary quits, reasons why you can quit your job and still get unemployment benefits. And as Mark said, the legislature attempted to put some parameters around that in this last legislative session, and that was a very good thing. It was in response to a court case where we thought this list was exclusive, and the Supreme Court said, no, it's not. So the legislature went back and said, yes, we want to make very clear that this is an exclusive list. I expect that in the next legislative session, we will see efforts to open that up through one of two ways. One, you'll see groups come to the legislature and ask for a particular voluntary quit to be allowed, so something to add to the list of 11. Or what I expect you will see, and may even see from the Employment Security Department itself, is commissioner discretion, is what it's called. And there was an effort to attach this to last year's unemployment insurance bill. There was an amendment offered in the Senate by Senator Jean Cole Wells that would have given the Commissioner of Employment Security discretion to determine whether a claimant should be awarded benefits. So I quit my job. None of the reasons I quit fall within this list of 11 reasons why I should still get benefits. But if you have commissioner discretion, then it can go before the Director of Employment Security, and she can say, well, I know it's not one of these 11, but it sure seems like a good case to me, so I'm going to award benefits. And I know from our perspective, that's a tremendous concern, because if you do that, then what was the point of putting the parameters around the legislation last year? saying, all right, we're not taking anything away, but we're just saying no more than this 11. And, as Mark said, all right, then we have the apprenticeship program. And one of the questions I have, if you are in an apprenticeship program and you're collecting unemployment benefits, how do you fulfill the work search requirements? Are there none? I guess. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how it works. But I do know that under most of the other voluntary quits, you have to be looking for work in order to remain eligible for unemployment benefits. But as we heard, if you are claiming under the domestic violence exclusion, you don't have to look for work, and I would imagine with the apprenticeship also. So now, not only are we creating incentives or reasons for people to, well, you can quit work for any of these reasons, but you don't have to look for a job either. You can just collect benefits. And in Washington, thanks to many extensions from the federal government, you can collect benefits for, what is it, almost 125 weeks? 125 weeks. So 2.25 years, you can collect unemployment benefits. And in some cases, not even be looking for a job. And that is not why the system was created. So one of our big focuses in the next legislative session will be preventing any further erosion of the voluntary quit language, including this commissioner discretion idea. The law is clear. We believe there are too many exclusions now, and don't expect that we'll be successful in rolling any of them back. I think right now we're just kind of in a please do no harm role, and so that's one of the things that we're going to be watching out for in the next legislative session on behalf of our members is don't erode that any further. Are there any questions about that? I mean, I'm sure everybody in here has a story. If the members of our organization are any indication, lots and lots of calls. I get calls from hey, I had a guy who he stole a bunch of my equipment. I can't get it back. He won't return any of my phone calls. I'm trying to offer him a job anyway because I don't want this. I don't want him to be collecting benefits. I have work available. Can't get a hold of him. Doesn't matter. He gets benefits, and it always comes back to this: the law is liberally construed to favor the claimant. That liberal construction is a killer. And in 2003, when we passed unemployment insurance reform legislation, we were successful in removing that section of the law right there. Took it out. So it didn't direct the agency to liberally construe the law in favor of the claimant anymore. And it lasted less than a year. The next legislative session came right back in and put it right back into law. So unfortunately, it didn't last long enough to have any measurable impact. But that is a real killer because at the end of the day, if the law isn't clear, the folks in employment security will fall back on liberal construction and will almost always award benefits to the claimant. And there are a lot of reasons why people should get unemployment benefits, particularly in this economy when a lot of people are laying people off. In the residential construction industry, it's terrible. It's a terrible time to be in this industry right now. And I know a lot of our members are facing big tax increases in 2010 because of their experience. If they manage to stay in business, they're going to get a tax increase. But our state, I believe, and I think a lot of our members believe, creates too many incentives not to work. And the list of 11 voluntary quits and the efforts to expand that even further with commissioner discretion or whatever are just symptomatic of that. So,
Amy mentioned the efforts by the Employment Security Department to secure federal funds and what they're looking at doing, extending benefits to. That
yes.
we talked about, because I'm very concerned about that, and I don't think these folks have heard about it, and I think their eyes are going to get big when they hear about it.
Right. This is another interesting thing that we'll be seeing in the next legislative session. The Employment Security Department has the opportunities to secure $97 million in one-time federal funds to improve our unemployment insurance system. And there are 4 criteria. One of 4 criteria must be met in order to obtain this one-time money. They're calling it unemployment insurance modernization is what it's referred to. And they can either offer benefits to part-time employees, so somebody who works part-time can obtain unemployment benefits if they are find themselves out of work. Dependent coverage advantage. This is a scary one because, as many of you know, if you have ever tried to navigate the workers' compensation system, it would be similar to that. You can collect more unemployment benefits if you have dependents. So like in workers' compensation, if you are married with 5 children, you get a greater percentage of your income in a time loss payment than you do if you're just single with your children. And so that's one of the things that they're contemplating adding to the unemployment insurance system, because that's worked so well in workers' comp. Training benefits, which is where I expect that they probably will go, or voluntary quits for family reasons. And this is what's interesting to me because they did this last year. It is one of the voluntary quits, and I remember at the time they said, well, we need to do this in order to secure this, one-time federal funding. So they did it, and now they're saying, oh, but now we need to do something else in order to secure this one-time federal funding. So I think, well, are they just going to come back every year and say, we have to do this in order to secure this one-time federal funding until they get everything that they need? And the problem with this is, regardless of which one of these options they choose, they are putting the state on the hook for long-term, for continuing to fund these benefits in the long term. So we get one-time $97 million from the federal government, but what do we do next year when that money isn't there? And we are still on the hook for providing those benefits. The state is going to have to pick up the cost, and by the state, I mean you with your tax dollars. And
And how much is it going to cost for extending the part-time benefits
We
or
don't know.
to families with dependents?
We don't know, and I think that's one of the concerns that I know we have expressed is we can't get any indication from Employment Security about what this is going to cost. So, okay, we're talking about we get $97 million to expand this benefit. What is it going to cost? So we can estimate what the long-term impact to employers is going to be, and they don't know. They can't give us any estimates for what the cost is going to be. So why would we support this?
I think your comments have triggered a question. Go ahead.
So let me clarify this. $97 million for Washington State,
Yes.
and we have sounding like a surplus compared to other states.
Right. Well, we
They
have
own us.
the money that we have in the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund right now can only be used for providing unemployment benefits. So they can't siphon it away the way they do in workers' compensation to pay for things unrelated to unemployment benefits. You can only use it to pay unemployment benefits. So this $97 million could be used for a new computer program at Employment Security, which, arguably they probably need. Our system of calculating, the way the computer system that they use to calculate benefits and taxes is old. But the business community
Try
has...
to get a computer that liberally construes.
I
Yeah, pay
know.
extra for that.
Yeah, well, but we've given them suggestions about how they could finance the purchase of a new computer system using existing funds, not the unemployment insurance trust fund, but other funds related to this. They would rather secure the $97 million in one-time funding. So it's a way to look good to the federal government by modernizing our system, by bringing our system, into, I guess, into the realm of where other states are going. This is a push in all 50 states. The federal government is pushing all states to expand benefits in this way, and they're using the carrot of $100 million to do it. So it's just all part of the Obama administration's effort to expand.
Well, and the trap or the obstacle, I don't know if it's obstacle, one of the nuances we have is that our employment security director is this year's chairwoman for the unemployment insurance directors of the country. So she wants to make sure she's a leader in receiving this $97 million, and she wants to show that her state can do it. And she would look bad if we didn't, so it's a huge priority for her.
It doesn't matter if we don't need it.
Good question.
Has anyone looked at the relationship between the growth of unemployment insurance and the growth of homelessness? Because it seems like these long benefits and this easy way is just going to trap somebody to a system that's going to eventually lead to homelessness. Because you're going to pay them to not work until eventually they get to a place where they can't work, and then they're going to be homeless. It seems like a vicious cycle because the very thing they're trying to avoid is the very thing they're creating.
That's a great point. And that's something the policy center should look at.
Yeah, and I I think it's a valid concern, particularly when you look at some of these voluntary quits. Now, apprenticeship would fall into that category, because presumably these people are, going into do a different career path. But what about the woman who quits her job because she's a victim of domestic violence and, collects unemployment benefits for 2¼ years with no job search requirements or no requirement that you go out there and I'm not saying that people wouldn't, but there's not the incentive to do so. And then, 2+ years later, your benefits run out, and then what do you do? So, I don't think the system was intended to be, an income replacement source, the way I think a lot of groups are beginning to see it.
It's like a giant methadone clinic.
Betty, you have a question?
Yeah, I have many. Amy, you touched on, I want to go back to that modernization. It seems like a liberally construed use of that word. If modernization means expanding benefits to the few people left don't get it now. So it would it refer to updating technology? Because to me, when you said that, I thought, oh good, because that's one of my concerns. The technology is so outdated, and in this era of greenness, my goodness, I get a stack of envelopes with 2-page climate separation statements every day in my mailbox. And there's just paper. Determination notices are written in 2 languages on multiple pieces of paper. And there's just nothing but paper spewing from that agency. Do you know if there's any effort at all or any initiative or willingness to
Paperwork reduction initiative?
update their system so that, and also as an employer, there's so many questions that come to mind about the particular cost of an employee or what an employee is, how they're affecting our account, that sort of thing. And so I would love to go online and be able to just see my account. But everything has to be done by paper, by fax, by mail. There's nothing, we can't email the department. So is
it is actually. It's when I talked about the training benefits, that is one of the things the department is seeking. Part of the federal funding for is to modernize the computer system. And what I was saying is we have given them alternatives. We have said, okay, we don't disagree that the computer system is antiquated and could use updating. Why don't you use, you have $20 million a year that goes into a training benefit account, and it's underutilized. And so I think we have a surplus in that account. Now, you can't retroactively go back and say, oh, we collected it for this purpose, but now we're going to use it for this new computer program. But you could say the money that we collect, because we have a surplus, because it's being underutilized, we want, for the next year or 2 years, or however long it needed to be, the prospective revenue that comes into that account, we're going to take that and apply that to the purchasing of the computer program. And we've said that, because you've got all this excess money, use the money that you already are collecting to do that instead of getting us on the hook for expanding benefits and then down the road we have to continue those.
So the conversation, is there any appetite for that in the department?
No.
Does the current director have any interest in technology?
Yeah.
Bringing her agency into a modern age like 1990?
Yes, that is what they want to do. That is what they want to do, is update the computer program. Now, in terms of paperwork reduction or things like that, I don't know. But I do know that they are talking about upgrading the computer system and using some of this $97 million to do that.
Let me turn it over to Judy. I want to make sure that she has adequate time to tell about her
May I
story.
stand up, because otherwise I can't see those people.
Yep.
They want to be talking through the podium. Thanks, Mark, very much. In Mark's introduction, he said our experts. I'm not an expert. I'm a small business owner, like most of you. It's just that I have had so much experience with this issue, and it just makes me madder than a hornet, has since back in the year 2000, that I had this sign plastered on my back, I'm willing to speak out as poster child for small business. And so I've ended up testifying, and I've ended up doing panels like this, usually in conjunction with work that the Association of Washington Business is doing, because I'm on the board of directors with AWB, and so I get involved there. And I volunteer to come down and testify when I need help on this issue a lot, paid family leave, that's a whole other story, and some of those things. But what I did when, I didn't know until on Friday, I think, that I was going to get tagged to do this, I thought, oh God, I don't like to be unprepared for stuff. All I had to do was go back to my unemployment folder and use the testimonial and just cut and paste yesterday on the computer. I didn't have to go back and do any more research. But I feel like, and I don't know how many of you how long you've been in business. I know Doug Lumber's been around a long time. It's my husband's favorite spot. 100 trips on a weekend with Doug in Renton. I don't know if you were around in 2000, 2001, the last economic downturn. But I feel like it's deja vu out here. And what I decided to do as a small business owner is take the Olympia speak from the experts, and they do a darn good job of it too, and relay it to you guys, what it means to those checks that you sign. You know, what it means to every time an employee walks off the job, or you've got somebody you've got to get rid of. And it was interesting because one of my questions was the literal construction, where we are with that right now. The only appeal I ever won on a voluntary quit when somebody just walked off was during that window of time when when liberal construction wasn't in there. I went, hot damn, you know, we actually won one. You know, it just makes you so angry. But let's rewind the tape a little bit. I'll pretend we're on rewind and go back into December of 2002, just about 7 years ago. My husband Jim and I own a commercial printing and distribution company in Bury, and been in business since 1986. And in the 90s, we were rocking. I mean, we were expanding, rock and roll, you know, hiring employees. We were up to 18. I know that's not big to you guys. You know, to us it was big. And then in 2000, the end of 2000, I started getting real nervous because sales went flat. And not only did sales go flat, my receivables tanked. In other words, I was dialing for dollars all the time. And I told Jim at the beginning that it wasn't September 11th, 2001. This started before. This was in the end of 2000, beginning of 2001. And I told Jim, I said, something's wrong. And I think we better get ahead of the curve. And we better scale back because I'm really nervous. And so we did. And unfortunately, we had to lay off some longtime employees, cut our workforce pretty drastically, and those folks drew unemployment for a long time. Because of that economic downturn, it wasn't nearly as bad as this one that we've been in. But because of that, there weren't printing jobs out there. You know, press operators and bindery and that sort of thing. Those people, we lost a lot of competitors back in 2001. So those employees drew a lot of unemployment. Well, in December of 2002, we got our rate notice from Employment Security Department, and our rates were set to double. And along with that notice came information about the Voluntary Contribution Program. How many of you are aware of that? You'll find out probably in December of this year if you laid anybody off in the last 2 years. But our rate was going to double. But they had a solution, and it's a program that they are compelled to let you know about, and that is you can buy down your prospective new rate. We could have bought down and maintained our 2002 rate. All we had to do by February 15th was come up with $30,000 in cash. Now, for a small, struggling company who had liquidated their retirement funds and everything else, just to make it through that downturn, yeah, like that's going to happen, right? So it happened, our rate in 2003 doubled to 4.2%, and it climbed to 6.15% in 2005. In 2005, we paid $18,757 in SUI premiums, $1,875 per employee. This is for a small company. Those premiums were almost 1% of our gross sales, and they lowered our net profit by 16%. In 2006, we paid $1,746 per employee. It was starting to come down, right? Because you start shedding those bad years. Well, we didn't really get any substantial relief until 2007. And then this past year, our rate is at like 1.15. Oh man, I don't mind signing those checks at all. And my husband gets so upset with me because he says, I want to get rid of this person or whatever. Why are you always bringing up unemployment? And I said, because I'm the one writing the checks every quarter. You don't even see it. what it can affect, how it can affect you. And what happens is, as you try to grow, which, and fast forward to right now, because this is in kind of an instant replay of what happened back then. So the economy gets better, right? And we started to grow again, and sales picked up. And we couldn't afford to hire the people to handle the increased sales because the cost per employee was exorbitant. And that's exactly what's going to happen this December, next month. When you get, if you lay off any people, your members, oh my God, I'm naming this. I'm scared to death to open that envelope when it comes in December. And again, as we're trying to climb our way out of this recession, small business is going to drive that. But when the cost per employee is so high, you won't be able to hire as many people. And I approached Representative Conway back in September at the AWB regional meeting in Tacoma. He was kind enough to attend. We took his life jacket off, the whole thing, gone toe-to-toe with Representative Conway more than once. But UI is a soft spot for him. But I told him, I followed him home, I said, Steve, I got to tell you, I'm scared to death. I said, the recovery is going to be so seriously hampered by UI costs. And forget, we got unemployment reform coming up the next session. I'm heading over to that one too, because the proposed rate's there, the rate increase is there. But I really fear for the recovery in this state because small business, and those of us who are small get hit disproportionately hard when we lay off employees. So that's what it's going to mean to you, in your pocketbook. And as if things aren't bad enough already on the horizon, these two did a great job of telling you what's coming down the pike. Labor's going to be pushing. I would have had lunch with Donna Stewart from AWB last Friday, and she shared exactly what you guys did. So I would be up to. I'm not an Olympian. I don't live down in Olympia. These guys do. So they just let me know what's going on when they need me. But one thing that hasn't been mentioned yet, and Labor will be pushing very hard to get one or more of those things to get that money for Karen Lee, the agency director, is, right now everybody's talking about this plush fund we have, this very solvent fund, and it's predicted that, I believe, Donna told me that if we don't increase anything, we're solvent for 10 months out in the trust fund through 2015. But what the department doesn't tell you, and Labor doesn't tell you, is that if we start with any of these other added benefits and sucking money out of that trust fund, we're going to get below solvency rate, which is 5 months. Is it, you guys?
I thought it was 9.
Donna told me 5, but whatever it is, or 7 months. She says if benefits are expanded and the trust fund dips below 7 months of reserves, guess what we get to pay? A solvency tax in the employment community. So they're going to jack on another tax onto your increased rates because of who you had to lay off in the last year. So my understanding from working with AWB is, just as Mark and Amy said, it's going to be a defensive year. Business probably isn't going to go on the offense for much. It's just going to beat off the alligators with, as much as you can. And one thing I would encourage, again, I don't live in Olympia, but I do a lot of work with the Association of Washington Business. And I've found that, I'm asked often to come down and testify. They call me, we're one of the real people, we're real people, see, versus lobbyists. And they always say, look, I brought a real person, Judy Cooper's here, it's a real person. But it does help our lobbyists when you as business owners or me go down there and talk real speak, like I just did, dollars and cents to these legislators who don't have a clue what it's like. They've never signed a farmer paycheck. So I would encourage you that if one of your trade associations, like the AWB, Association of Washington Business, the retailers, DIAW, or whatever one, puts out a call to action, raise your hand and say, okay, I'll come down, I'll do it. Very first time I testified, I'll never forget it, it was a UI thing. I had no clue what I was doing. And I walked in, and Melanie with AWB, I don't know if you remember her, we walked into this room and they had to expand it because it was a labor issue. It was UI, right? And I walked into this room, this big, huge room, and it was a sea of hard hats. on the biggest bin I've ever seen in my life. They bust them in, you know, because it was a union issue, and Melody looked down at me and she said, "Are you okay?" Because I've never done this before. And I said, they just look like my Harley riding son. I said, "No big deal." But anyway, so it's kind of a booth. It's fun to do it, but it can be really worth your time because we're in a fight, guys. Businesses are at risk. We're not out of this recession. We're bumping along the bottom, and it's going to be a struggle time now. Thanks.
Thanks, Judy. And thank you for making the time to come down and testify. She's exactly right. I'm glad you made that point. If any of you can spare some time, I know Betty, neighbors, David Morrell, you guys have been great about coming down. Joe, others, you know, it's really helpful if you can come down and tell your real life story. It's real people like Judy that make a big difference. Let me give you two other real quick statistics, and then we'll open it up for some brainstorming. So I hope you guys are thinking of some ideas of ways we can improve our system a little bit. Washington's unemployment insurance payments, we are ranked number 5 in the nation, behind Hawaii, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Rhode Island. That's not a place we really want to be. Even more alarming is our unemployment insurance taxes. We're number 2 in the nation, right behind Alaska. We're the second most unemployment insurance taxed state in the country, is number 2. And these are 2008 numbers. They haven't updated for 2009 yet. And that's out of my handy little Wash Ace Red book that is produced. A great little book if you ever get a chance to get a handle on one of those.